How's it going, everybody? It's the Sketch Monkey here, and welcome back to a new video. In this video, we're gonna talk about all of these things that are back here, and that is, of course, markers. I'm gonna show you the basics of blending, and I want to do it on both a marker pad and a regular print paper, so you can see the difference and how the markers react to different kinds of papers. So get your markers ready and let's get started. Alrighty, so for this video we're gonna be using these markers right here, and these are Motica markers. They were sent to me last week, and I thought I would try them out in this video while we are doing some blending exercises. They look kind of cool. They're all green, so you can definitely tell that this is a specific brand when you see them. So thanks to Motica for sending me this cool gray set. And now let's get into the sketching part. First of all, let's clean up this mess right here. Sorry about that. I should have done that before I started the video, but you get to see some sketches there, so I think it's all good, I guess. All right, so here we have regular print paper. That's what we're going to be using today as well. In addition to this brand new Copic marker pad that I just opened. I've had this for about 3 or 4 years, but I haven't opened it, and I think that tells you what kind of paper I prefer to sketch on. It's kind of a giveaway there. But first of all, let's start by making a comparison between the two. So what I'm going to do first is create a simple square. A square, simple like that, and I'm gonna do that on the marker paper as well later on. And now let's take these out and let's start with, so let's say that this is going to go from light to dark. It's very simple, a very basic type of shading. So what we want to do is obviously start with the lightest shade, and the reason for that is if you start with the lightest shade and you make a mistake, you can always go darker. But if you start with a darker shade, there's no way to erase it. So what I'm gonna do is find the cool gray one, which is right here. Just go over the whole surface. One thing I noticed with these Motica markers is that they are kind of dark. The cool gray one, for example, if we compare it to the Chroma markers right here. So this is a cool gray one with Motica markers, and this is a cool gray one with Chroma markers. So you can see that there is a big difference there. This is almost like a cool gray 3 of Chroma markers, while this is barely making any you can barely see the gray. But I like this because this, when you just feel like sketching fast, the cool gray one of the Chroma marker is just enough to give it a little bit of depth, and when you don't want to go all crazy with markers. So that was step one. Go through the whole square with the cool gray 1, and now I'm gonna jump into cool gray 2 and just start a little bit lower. This is obviously all up to you. And just go from side to side, and I'm using the chiseled edge here. The reason for that is because it gives me a horizontal starting point. So since this is horizontal here, I can just put the chiseled edge and drag it across. And also, one thing that's important to remember here is to keep the speed up when you're using markers. It doesn't only mean to keep the speed up when you're sketching with markers, but as well as when you're blending. So now I'm going back to the cool gray 1 here to try and create this transition between the two shades and have it be more of a neutral transition instead of just a sharp edge. So that's what I'm gonna do now all the way down. I might go down to cool gray, let's see, 6 maybe, and do that. So I'm gonna do cool gray 6 from the bottom now anyway. And this marker seems to be a little bit dry from the start, and it's almost black. So that's not that good for the Motica markers. Now let's see if we can fix this. This is actually the first time I'm using these markers. I haven't tried them before this. So this is real-time reactions to these markers. So number 5 seems good. Seems to be all right. Now I'm looking for Cool Gray 3, which is right here. Before it dries completely, go back in and then just jump between the shades that you're using. So now I'm going back to Cool Gray 2 to try and get this shade right there. Then we can go back to Cool Gray 1 one more time and fill this in as well. So here we have Cool Gray 1, 2, 6 of the Motica markers. And the first impressions that I get here from the Motica markers is that it's very hard to see what type of shade, the correlation between the number on the marker and the actual shade of the marker. The number 1 seems a little bit too dark for me if we compare to, for example, chroma markers right here. And number 6, it's almost black down here. So it's interesting. I want to see now what the 8 looks like, for example, just to have a comparison. And then we have probably a number 9 somewhere. Yep, right here. So you can see that these are basically the same. I don't see any difference between 8 or 9 or even 6 or 9 are very, very similar. So I guess if you want to have a very good range of shading, maybe not Motica markers are not the best markers for you, but if you only use 1 or 2 shades per sketch like I do, they work fine. So it's totally up to you how big of a precision in your shading you want to have in your markers. But right now I think the chroma markers are the better alternative between these two. And I'm gonna do the same thing now on the marker paper. So let's just take out, actually we can keep it in here and do the exact same thing. I want to keep it in frame though. Alright, so let's start with number 1 here, just like we did on the regular print paper. And let's see how this is going to react. So as you can see from the start, the blending or the strokes are a lot smoother on marker paper than it is on print paper. And I think it also depends on what type of markers, what type of brand you're using. When it comes to Motica markers here, I think the difference is more pronounced than if you're using other types of markers. So I'm jumping into Cool Gray 2 now, all the way down. Keep the speed up, and then going back to Cool Gray 1 to kind of blend these together. And blending, of course, works a lot better on marker paper as well. It's all a preference what you prefer. I prefer print paper because it gives me, I like the friction that it gives me when I'm sketching on it. And marker paper is kind of like sketching on ice or a very slippery surface. So now we're going back to, I want to use the exact same markers even though it's not the best markers out there. Just to have a clear comparison between the two. Now I'm jumping into Cool Gray 4, which is also very dark. These markers are on the darker side of the spectrum, that's for sure. Might go back to Cool Gray 2 to blend these. Something like that. And this will dry later on and blend even smoother when it's dried. I want to go back to Cool Gray 1 one more time to get this gradient going right there. So here you can see the difference between print paper, which is a lot more harsh. It feels, when you're sketching on it, you can feel the friction on it. And blending works great. I mean, I like to blend on print paper. It doesn't matter to me if you see the strokes or not. But if you want a more airbrushy feel to the blending, then you might want to use marker paper. It's a lot more expensive than this, of course, but it might be beneficial depending on what it is you're sketching and what type of outcome you want with the markers. Now, I want to talk to you about another thing that is very helpful when you're sketching, when you're trying to blend markers, and that is using this type of marker right here. And this is a zero colorless marker. And this is meant for blending, and I would probably only use this if I sketch on marker paper because it's kind of useless on print paper. But the thing is, what you can do is before you start adding values to your sketch, you want to go over the area where you're going to blend your markers with this colorless blender here. And what that does, it creates almost like a wet canvas. And creating a wet canvas obviously means that blending is going to be a lot easier. I personally never use the colorless blender. You know, I kind of like when the sketch isn't perfect. I don't like perfection. I'm not looking for a marker sketch to be perfect. I want it to have some imperfections in it because that makes it more interesting. But since I have a colorless blender here, I thought I would show you what it does. And it basically creates smoother gradients than you would get if you're not using it. And especially, of course, if you're using marker paper like I'm doing right here. So that was a Cool Gray 1 as always, as previous. And then a Cool Gray 2. Same thing here. I think the Motica markers, the steps between the two markers are too strong. I would like a lesser, I would like the shading to be smoother, a bit of a less step between 1 and 2. So a gradient in between those would be great, like a 1.5 or something. And what I'm doing now is just going back to Cool Gray 1. Let's start from the bottom with a Cool Gray 6 like we did on the two other sketches here. I think this is already dry, but I haven't used it ever before. And it looks black to me. This Cool Gray 6 is like a black. So, well, that's good. I mean, I got extra black markers now, which I use a lot when I'm sketching, so it doesn't really matter. It's not a big deal. This is Cool Gray 3. So we have 1, 2, 6, and then I'm gonna start in between these. Add some 3 in here. And what else do we have? We have a Cool Gray 4. Can throw that in here as well. It's getting almost too wet here now, as you can see. Then let's go back to Cool Gray 1 and just smear everything out. But that's what you use the colorless blender for, is to make these transitions even smoother than you would get without it. As you can see right here, this is colorless blender, this is without it. So just for fun, I want to show you how I prefer to sketch when I use markers. It's very simple, not complicated. I don't like to complicate things at all. I usually just, let's do a car down here, of course. Like cars, everybody loves to sketch cars, I guess. So I'm just gonna put out a quick car here. Like this. You can make it a Lambo. Lamborghini DNA right here. Not sure how the rear ends on a Lambo. Can't remember. Let's just cut it out like that. And of course the chiseled front end like that, and then we have the greenhouse right here. Some air intake right there. This looks like a Huracan. Air intake down there. Have some cool things going on in the rear. Maybe add a air intake in the front here as well. Complete the Lambo look. So let's say we have this right here, and I feel like, dang, I want to add some markers to this sketch because we have all the lines here now, and it looks like it just begs for some markers. So what I like to do is just use 1 or 2 cool grays. I'm not going to be using the Motica now. Now I'm going to be using the chroma markers because, as I said, I prefer those because they are lighter than the Motica markers. Not going to be using the colorless blender. I think it's kind of unnecessary, if I'm honest with you. So what I'm doing now is just covering this whole sketch, pretty much the whole thing. The horizon line right here, the center of the car. I'm going to cover that with some cool gray. This is cool gray 1. And you can see, you can barely tell that there is a marker on this sketch, which I love. It just gives this little depth feeling, and it just looks like a sketch, and it doesn't look like an illustration, and that's exactly what I'm going for with these type of sketches. So keep it very loose and not spend a lot of time on each sketch. Just want to get it down and get the sketch going as fast as possible. And to me, this would be a totally fine sketch. But what I like to do in addition to this, when I'm done with the marker, is to just go back with the big pen to clean up the lines. And once you've cleaned up the lines, if you want, you can go in with add some more details to this sketch. It's not very detailed right now, but that's fine. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this sketch. But if you want, you can always go back in and add whatever details you want to your sketch. The thing is, though, you always want to be done with the markers before you go in and add some line weight to it, because if I'm adding line weight to this sketch now and then I come back with marker again, that means that we have more Bic ink on the sketch that will bleed and mess up the sketch. I don't care about bleed that much, but if I can reduce it, then of course, you know, I have nothing to lose by just finishing up my Bic work before I go in heavy with any markers and so on, if I want to do that. So there we go. That's a very, very simplistic sketch. Just the way I like to sketch things. Doesn't have to be more than this to have some fun with markers and Bic. So that's about it for this video. I just wanted to show you some basics of shading, and also talk about the Motica markers and try them out myself. I thought, why not make a video on it when I try them out for the first time, so you can see how they perform on both types of paper. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you in the next one. If you like this video, please share it with a friend that you think will be interested in sketching. That really means a lot to me, and I'm sure they will thank you for it as well. I'm the Sketch Monkey, and I will see you in the next video. Take it easy.